Are you a leader in customer success, pre-sales, professional services, support? Do you work behind the scenes and roll up your sleeves to make sure that customers are happy? Renew. Then this is for you. Welcome to the GSD Podcast. Welcome to the GSD Podcast. Getting it done. Services, success, and software. We'll talk with the pros that have been in the trenches, getting service teams off the ground, launching new types of groups to service customers, or running agencies that don't have a product attached to it. For the pros, by the pros. This is the GSD Podcast, and this is your host, Jeff Kushmerek.
Hey there, it's Jeff. I just wanted to quick intro for my latest episode with Vik, who's a great friend of mine. We worked a bunch at Genera Digital, and he really helped me out on some design stuff when we were there. We got into a bunch of great topics here. The reason why I want to put this quick intro is that the sound Zoom was doing a little funny compression stuff when Vik was speaking, and a little bit, but definitely stay in. He raises some just incredible points. We get into how to scope design aspects of professional services projects. We're always under the gun for that stuff. And besides that, we got into what can make or break professional services projects in the design aspects, and then just how to best work with existing teams and dev teams and internal teams, and how to make that all work. So definitely give it a listen. Would love to hear your feedback, and I'll put another one out there next week. Bye.
I think, hold on. Now it's recording. It says recording, and then it kind of gives you a little thing. So maybe, I'm sure you get this all the time, Vik. Like maybe you can work on that on the UX department. Do you get those snide comments all the time?
I love getting requests by way of, I need UX help with this. This needs some UX help. It could mean anything from a PowerPoint slide all the way to a system that is connected to a robotic arm, DNA. And you could run the whole gamut.
I actually meant to tell you, I really need help with my GSD logo for the podcast. And so that's kind of why I brought you on here.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll just load up Microsoft Paint and
oh, Paint.
Yeah, going right on that. Yeah.
Paint.exe. I love it.
You need a bitmap, right? It needs a bitmap.
Yes.
Okay,
16-bit. Maybe if you can get some Nintendo music in the background, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's got to be 8-bit then. Yeah. It's terrible recording. I mean, why is the text in white and has a drop shadow? Why did they use the blink tag from 1996?
Netscape Communicator?
Netscape Communicator 4.5. What is this?
One of my friends is going to call me on that because I actually used a Netscape Communicator joke yesterday. But it's just terrible. Well, let me do a quick intro. Vik and I were former coworkers, so you'll hear lots of private jokes and everything. I'll try and something, but Vik, I'm actually going to try something new. Instead of waiting till the last 5 minutes to throw in all the random questions, I'm going to just randomly drop in. You'll see, you'll appreciate it.
Lord, yes.
Because then people can't just go, oh, they just bullshitting now. Like I'm going to hit stop now, but no, we're just going to sprinkle it in through.
You're going to roll right into it. I love
it. So talk a little bit about yourself, because you had so let's drop the concept here. First of all, Vik's a UX designer. In the context of professional services, that can mean lots of things. So I want to talk about sort of you had a very interesting career path where you did some other stuff and then moved into UX and then did services work and then said, I'm all set with that. I think I'm going to stop.
Yep.
You got sane, unlike some of the rest of us. So I'd love to hear
a person explain me to myself. It's very
nice.
Interesting. Yeah.
By the way, I think where we first met, I can't remember. I can't remember if I first met you in your old offices on Harrison Ave, because I was there yesterday. But then I know you guys did like a wife swap thing with Blueport Commerce, and I'm not sure whose office was whose. So
I think, yeah, I love the term wife swap, first of all. You just abstracted that mental model so cogently.
We'll put half our employees here, and then you'll come over there, and
right. And then everyone will be confused on what the priorities are, and also be really siloed and unable to actually get any positive change. Yeah, I think we first met at the Harrison Avenue shop. It's done Humvee.
Yes.
A product they had called Buzz Agent, which was really interesting. How that meeting with you eventually turned into working with you full time. That story is also really cool, and I think partially the story of Boston Tech. It's small here. We're closely knit community. We also just want to yell at each other to get out of each other's faces. The same time.
We eat our own, absolutely.
Exactly, we're cannibals, and we're proud of it. I have what I think hiring managers refer to as a varied background. I started off studying biomedical engineering at BU because I was a compulsively curious child and wanted to study the human organism as like a biological system. So that
actually plays out a little bit more later on. So that's interesting. I hadn't realized that. Yeah.
I just took many side paths and segues, and the reason for that is I started to work in the industry in biopharma, and I was really young. For some backstory, I graduated from high school when I was 16. I moved
no kidding.
to Boston when I turned 17 that summer. Part of that was I was in West Texas.
Oh,
I was fully.
So you could spell, so you graduated. Right?
Partially that.
Apologies for all of my West Texas listeners.
Sorry, I'm from West Texas, so I think I can prod a little bit. But growing up as the only Indian kid in West Texas, I was like, I think I got get out of here a little bit. I think
I'm shocked.
So
and you are progressive, right? Like you got the cool guy dressed nice, you got the earrings. At least the ones I could see. I'm not gonna get.
So many piercings. I do body suspension, on the side. Really, that's my main passion is being suspended by piercings in my body. Yeah, total sidecar.
It's okay.
Yeah, I'm like an openly progressive person. I feel like you can't get dropped into a place like West Texas as a complete immigrant and not have some different empathy. So I was, as a high school kid, I was taking classes during the summer, like as a teenager to say, what do I want to do with my summer? I think I'll do more school.
Exactly.
I could get out, but the school was my way out, and also was my way to get in touch with people who were like-minded and to have the level of conversations that you need to have to start learning how to do more with your life than might have been offered to you in high school. So I took that and I started to work in biopharma. I was, again, very young and at the point where you see 3% of the world and you say, yep, I know the other 97%. Because I'm grown. And
you're a mature man.
I'm a grown up, So I saw animal testing and weird FDA type things not being followed, and I didn't get a good feeling from the biotech world. So I just span off and started doing what I called firehouse programming. And to step back, while I was at BU, I worked at BU's engineering IT department. So I started my career dealing with scientists, researchers, engineers, doctors doing research. We would break their systems by making them update just one dot to OSX something else. It was still in that era of technology, circa 2003 and 4, where every update meant, whoops, we've broken everything.
Yeah.
Kind of in the same spot now, actually. When I think about it, we're sort of in the same spot.
Moved so far, yeah.
But a lot of my work was reverse engineering these like weird SCSI devices that were supposed to detect the ion exchange rate of something.
Yep.
And they no longer had an interface. So I would have to talk to them and both create the interface and capture what their requirements were. So I took
let's for people that don't realize, like, working next to a SCSI device is working next to like an airplane engine as well too, right? Like they're just super loud.
Yeah. They're just really loud and they actually generate a lot of heat.
Yep.
And they transfer things at the rate of like 1 500 kilobytes every few minutes or something. It's like those old zip drives that we used to
absolutely.
have to giant floppy
Well, mega
disks. I don't know
drives.
if anyone,
Exactly. Yeah.
exactly. I don't know if anyone's picking up what we're putting down here. They might have to Google these things, which is good. Anyway, soon past that, I took a little break and programmed independently. People would call me up and say, "Hey, man, we totally botched this. We had investors and we told them that we would have this whole chat system set up and a way to schedule a call with an author as part of a book club by Friday." And I would just jump in and figure that out for them and work with different teams and just jump different tech stacks. So I became kind of a polyglot programmer. And then at some point I realized that I really didn't actually care about the code itself. Like that was fun for me, but I really wanted to see what happened when people used it. And I really wanted to design the experience. And at the time, there was no user experience. It was human-computer interaction. And we didn't have UX metrics. We had product telemetry. And
was this like all the Jacob Nielsen stuff and back then, or is this like that stuff, or is it different sort of philosophy?
Getting into the Jacob Nielsen stuff, that sort of school of thought and the Don Norman school of thought of affordances, indicators, signals and control systems, and how humans can like interact with computers to actually accomplish a task or a job wasn't really seen as a distinct job. It wasn't really seen as an independent role. And then I feel like, you remember in the 90s when all of a sudden we woke up and like everybody loved Oasis, and like a week before the band, like all of a sudden everybody was like, "Oh my God, Oasis is so cool." And you're like, what happened? Like, why is everybody obsessed with them all of a sudden? Like, I feel like the same thing happened in the industry where like a switch flipped somewhere, and all of a sudden every company was like rabid for hiring UX design.
Absolutely.
UX. We need UX. So like they didn't, oh, is it graphic design? Oh, we're hiring a graphic design. No, we UX designer. Someone to make PowerPoints. Like it's still in that area of amorphous enigma. I think. I feel like it's firmed up a little bit, but I feel like now we're going to come to a point where the designers themselves have to do some more rigorous thought on what our role is in an organization and what it means to actually provide value to the end user. So I feel like my career has put me in an interesting position to have a broad perspective on like the end-to-end product life cycle, from the technical aspects of how to actually develop the thing that can interact with resources in some database, all the way to the cognitive, emotional level of how to reduce someone's anxiety, or fixing a more well-defined term for what cognitive load means. Having a biomedical engineering background and some cognitive neuroscience skills can help me understand what the brain is doing when it's trying to process the edges and zones inside of an interface.
On that point, actually, I got a quick question. Do you feel that you use those skills, or do you approach things more with empathy? Because I'm hearing both there, right? There's like, oh, you're processing X, which means we want you to have Y, and we don't want that. Or is it more like, oh man, I'm so sorry. Like, we want you to have this feeling.
Well, I think it depends on the audience.
Okay.
I think that there are times when a designer may need to purposefully pull on someone's heartstrings. I'm in an industry that's healthcare, wellness. My company, Foundation Medicine, does precision medicine. So we try to make good recommendations for patients with cancer. So there are times when you can pull that lever and say, look, every 3 minutes we save for each of these 40 people is 120 minutes. Every 5 minutes we make a good recommendation for a child that has pediatric bone marrow cancer. Like, think about that.
Yeah.
So if I want to punch you right in the gut with emotion, I can have that through line, but by the time I need to get this into code, for me, it's more about I'm having hopefully high-level, meaningful conversations with stakeholders, and I need to transmit those conversations to code.
Let's stay on this subject, because it's going to cross the services line and product line, and this is kind of where I wanted to draw the delineation, because on services, everything's very much time frame based, right?
Yes.
No, we need this in 3 weeks, and the marketing's being sold on it already, and all that stuff. Which we didn't too much. We didn't really have those types of projects when we worked together, but everything's deadline based, right? Do you still deal with that more where you are now, or is it more like, no, just keep doing it till you get it right?
That is a great question. It's I think it's actually, we would like to think that we have more time, and that the mantra should be take your time, do it right. We're playing with people's lives, but the reality is that when we falter, when we fail to meet internal deadline, some other company is probably hitting that deadline, or we have to assume our competitors are moving at a faster clip. We have to assume that there is some company that is starting next month that does not have the technical debt that we have, and will be able to be more, for lack of a better term, agile, truly agile than we will be able to be. So it's a game of trying to peg when you can put more time into things, and understanding that you do need to have a sense of urgency. And I think that is why having a professional services background actually has been so helpful when I'm in-house.
Yes, I would always, when I was on the other side, after doing services and then doing product stuff, I would really try and hire services people, because they do have a little bit of that deadline philosophy or urgency, sense of urgency, right? So.
Yeah. And for a designer, the skill to be able to estimate and point design stories it should not be underestimated. And that's one of the things I really learned working with you at Genera was being able to estimate, like even at arm's length, and have those estimates be meaningful, because we were at the point that we were able to discern what was boilerplate, and what among the boilerplate stuff were still complex. Like, you can make complex things boilerplate. There's a Don Norman quote that's my
that's pretty cool. I like that one. Yeah.
Complexity is not the problem, it's confusion that's the problem. So anytime someone says we need to make this simple, we need to make this intuitive, what on earth is intuitive about using a digital interface? I mean, humans have existed for how long? And out of that time, how long have we had these applications available to us? Very short time in comparison.
Well, on that note, did you work on that, how can I phrase this, that financial application that was based in Boston?
I worked on, oddly enough, some of the components for it.
But just on that note, because I don't want to just give it away,
right.
Don't want to break promises to people. But on that note, like that was a very complicated interface. But there's basically like, I need to make a trading decision. This is, so people listening, this is a biotech hedge fund company that we worked on, where we were pulling just all this disparate information for a buying decision. Should we invest in this company? And they were like, no, we need all this on the page right now. And I would say, like, a lot of the UX people that I worked with would, like, claw their eyes out with forks if they looked at these things. But like, you've got the actual users saying, no, I need all of this in front of me right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there are actually studies that are coming out that are showing what happens whenever a designer who is too consumer minded comes in and turns an internal application into a beautiful Apple product. And the amount of turnaround time that is reduced because people are literally scrolling several thousands of pixels. So there's a disconnect between key usability heuristics and design sentimentality versus aesthetics and abilities people need in-house for internal expertise, experts that need to use this stuff at a high level. I mean, and I think part of that is a lack of understanding of just how much processing power the human mind actually has. And we have all of these design books that people have written and that we read. I love Steve Krug. He wrote a book called Don't Make Me Think.
Oh, yeah. I read that. Yep.
I think people have taken that a little bit too far, though. I think people have taken that to mean that the interface should do all of the thinking
Right.
for you. And I don't know a single human that enjoys a robot
Well,
thinking.
no, and that it's funny. Let's bring it back to that specific application. That application, if you went and programmed you could do some machine learning on that and say like they're going to make the buy decisions. They're like, nope, no. Like we're not doing automatic buying decisions. Like,
Right.
although you could probably model it and do that, but there's a certain point where they're like, no, we just need to see this information in front of us because there is something else. There's a little bit of a gut. There's a little bit of a feel aspect to it as well too. So. Hey, let me. One quick thing I wanted to go over when you're sort of doing your intro, and you kind of did it when you talked about, hey, can you just work on that PowerPoint? Which is funny because I used to sit with all the design. I used to sit in an office of design people at Bright Cove, and just the stuff that they would just groan at was all of that. But with this UX in design, what's the biggest mistake people make about your role currently?
What is the biggest mistake? Like whenever somebody looks at me and what I do,
I will tell you, maybe this is, I'll tell you some of the stuff kind of you hear on the outside sometimes, and you'll be like, no, I can't believe people say that. But it's like, oh, they're going to come in, they're going to do their 2-month thing, they're going to interview a million different people, they're going to drink their avocado lattes and come up with
delicious avocado latte. It's got to be from the avocado skin. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah, catching the ball I'm throwing. Yeah.
I'm catching the ball here. I think that, I don't know how to answer this. I feel like the mistakes are actually on the designer's side. And I'll go into that a little bit. But in terms of people looking at what design is, I think that the problem is looking outward, looking from the outside in. The problem is assuming that design does something by itself. It is meant to be information. It is meant to unearth knowledge that needs to be had. It is meant to suggest solutions and make recommendations for how people interact with digital services, applications, solutions. And I think what they miss is the aspect of experimental theory. What a designer should be doing, and this dovetails into what the mistake on the designer side might be, is to think that you actually know anything. It's the mistake of assuming you understand the domain, whether you're in finance,
we just talked about this when we were talking about somebody last week. Exactly. Oh, I know about this, so I'm going to influence my designs about this because I have some knowledge of the subject.
Precisely. If anything, that should be a red flag for you to remove yourself from the situation, because you aren't in the situation where you're utilizing it for your job. You're utilizing pixels and different things for your job. As a designer, you should be prioritizing an experiment where you can clearly lay out what your independent variables are, what your dependent variables are, and which of those you need to change to help the person meet their goal. That's all you really need to do. You just maximize the chance that you will learn something. I think looking from the outside in, people expect a designer to be able to make some recommendation. I often hear, here, we have this table. It's full of really dense info. How do you think that we should redesign this? And my first question is, well, please walk me through why we redesign it. And eventually it'll get down to something like, oh, well, there's inline editing in this table. And after you edit the pre-existing information there's no error handling or validation. Okay, that's something that I can actually work with.
Right.
So I think you probably know this pretty well, having worked with designers. The thing with designers is that we will always say, please help me understand the problem. Don't give me a solution.
Right.
And that is an example of a misstep of when people who aren't in design go to meet with a designer or bridge with them.
Yeah, I just need like a endless page scroll and just a couple save buttons on the inline auto save and just some confirmation that they're doing it, and then just like a really nice hero image. That would be awesome.
Just knock out a comp that gives me that. And conversely, the mistake on the designer's end is assuming that all humans aren't designers in some way. If you organize or change your environment to maximize some positive outcome, then you're a designer. You've been doing that for, a lot of your life.
Hold on, I'm going to light some incense here. 1 second. This is getting into
Ooh,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, I can
I'm
hear
gonna
that,
pull out. I just
like the
pulled out my
sitar's playing, but
guitar.
that's not an offense on your nationality.
I'm
Um,
highly offended.
well,
But I
but
do
you know what?
honestly
On
think,
that note, I just would love to segue that a little bit into because services thing, scoping in services, right?
oh, yes.
The whole thing, right? Because we all know there's a good way to do it, and you can spend a ton of time in discovery and then all that stuff. But like that, we rarely get to do that. So I kind of want to get into like your perspective. We get brought into these situations. People are looking for a quote, and you've got to come up with something. I'm not going to say what's best and what worst, but like what can make you succeed and what can make you fail.
Well, I just usually blurt out some really high number, like 2.73
Oh, yeah.
million. And
Yep.
it's not a round number. It's got to be like a number that makes it seem like I put a lot of thought
Oh,
into it.
you got that from me because
0.73.
because we would do these things and I'm like, wow, that's 2.9 million. And somebody's like, so you're going to quote 3 million? I'm like, no, absolutely not.
No,
That's 2.97.
2.9. That
Right.
that makes it seem like it's real.
And the other note on that is if you give me 3 million, I can build you anything you want.
Exactly, yeah. So what can make me succeed is if I have an understanding of 3 dimensions: number of tasks, number of unknowns, and number of tasks, number of unknowns, known unknowns, and the broad level of complexity. And those are tricky because I'm able to do that, and we were able to do that as a product experience team at our last job.
Yep.
Because we had a certain amount of expertise.
Right.
So
some pattern recognition.
yeah, we could see into the situation and immediately say, all right, there needs to be a services tier, some federation of services that works together to have notifications. The internal workings of this mechanism need to notify each other. We're all talking about number of tasks here. Whenever this user or this role type needs to communicate information to this next step, are they working in a queue? Are they working in a stack? So right away, because I have a developer background, I can start talking about how to abstract the model so that it can do more work for the team.
Right.
We start coining shorthand phrases, ways to communicate very effectively about what the needs are. And from those conversations, we get those things to code. So it's all about the higher level of a conversation we can have internally, a higher level of a conversation we can have with our stakeholders. The sooner we can start to enumerate broadly the number of tasks that need to be done to even get started, we can start identifying the number of unknowns. Do we need more research? Are these unknowns dangerous to us, or do we need to just let them lie as they are? What are the most dangerous assumptions we have? And then laddering up to perceived level of complexity and understanding how to iterate as we learn more. I think that if you don't have any component of that, you're setting yourself up to either overpromise or underpromise, which is also bad. If you underburn, that means you're not getting the most out of your team, and that's very managerial speak. But people do tend to operate whenever they're pushed a little bit, and whenever they're trying to hit stretch goals. If your team estimates something and they're like, oh, look, we did the sprint and we have 47 story points left over, that means there was something wrong with your
that's terrible. Oh, our margin's great. And I'm like, oh, that makes me feel terrible when I talk to the company. It's so funny because I get so much pushback in the sales process about what I believe is absolutely the only way to go, which is like, look, unless you want us to go in and do a book report for 2 or 3 months, which we're all happy to do, there really is one right way to do this for what we know right now. And that's to give you a base level team and they just start working on things like you would have a product team, and they will as we go through and we start building up requirements, we let you know if we're going to need more people to do that, or maybe we drop stuff out. But and that's really the most sane way to do it, besides thinking you can guess we're going to need 15 screens here. Like, how would you know that? Right. Like,
right.
So it's, and I'm always trying to bridge those things where now I'm at this like minimum viable team. Like, look, without knowing where we are, I can tell you, you're gonna have like 2 backends, a front end, an architect, a PM, QA, and design, right? And the project will never get smaller than that, right?
Yeah.
But it can get a lot bigger if suddenly you want to start adding more and more stuff on. But like that's how you build product, right? You put a team together and you start, going through requirements, and I don't know. That's just,
I feel like I get pushback on. I mean, I'm not in sales, but I get pushback. I feel like we're talking about a similar thing that is from the outside seen as, I'm doing air quotes, you can't see me, jumping to solutioning.
Yeah.
And that's something designers talk about with each other. Oh, don't jump to solutioning. However, whenever you, that sounded very denigrating. Whenever you, for example, there's a great resource that's the gold standard for research on expertise. It's the Cambridge Handbook of Experts and Expert Performance. And whenever you read, well, it's like 1,000 pages long. I've only read like 5 pages of it. I looked at a lot of studies.
It was an abstract.
It was an abstract, and I think I know all about it. No, but I found out about this resource because a lot of white papers kept referencing it. And I noticed a trend when I looked at any of these white papers and when I looked at the actual book. Experts tend to create a partial problem frame. They start to just make a loom, that a scaffolding of the problem, and they only go into it as much as they need to at the time. And then experts in nearly any field, whether it's design, architecture, engineering, they jump pretty much immediately to solutioning based off of their wealth of experience, based on subconscious things that they aren't even aware of in their conscious domain. The ability to jump to a solution and use it to direct resources and point back at the problem is key to expert level performance. And what you're talking about is exactly that. It's the ability to just make deep, like broad block cuts about what the problem is, and then get your hands dirty and start talking about real things. And a lot of times designers want to stay up floating in the clouds, high level, talking about mood boards and framing the problem. And I love those things. I think they're really cool, and there's a place for them whenever you're closer to the ground. But if you try and assert yourself as the designer and say, no, I'm the one who's going to be doing the solutioning, you give me the problem, then you cut the entire conversation out. You relegate the ability to direct resources at learning more about the problem, because potential solutions do nothing more than illuminate more about the problem space. And how else are you going to talk about the problem space aside from just talking about it and hand waving? You need to have some tangible, cogent thing that people can use. And that's why I think that you're totally right. And that's why as a services professional, that was my go-to as well, was, okay, the next meeting, you are going to have some thing we can look at and poke in and talk about in a meaningful way. Because the problem statement, like if I wrote a problem statement on day one, and you've been in meetings with me, we tend to like to do this as consultants because it's very hard. If we ever compared the problem statement from the beginning of a project to the end, I don't think it's very often that it's the same statement or that it's written the same way.
That'd be interesting to do that in the not the postmortem, but the after party. And as you know, I never like to use postmortem. I like to use after party because it should be successful. It's a big party afterwards.
Is a nicer way to put that. I've been using a retrospective.
Retro is nice and professional.
I don't really feel that either. It's kind of austere. After party seems pretty cool.
It's fantastic, right? Actually, I'll just keep it light for another quick second, like I promised. What is, we're big into memes and GIF postings back and forth when we work together. What is your current favorite go-to? Like, I'm gonna just copy and paste this, and I know the laughs will keep going. Like,
I'm opening up Slack right now, and I'm seeing when I just okay, so. Apparently, my favorite one is the hide your kids, hide your wife GIF, because I've been using that a lot.
Okay.
I think that I've been using that. I've been building momentum here in terms of to to step back a little
as a Giphy expert.
as a Giphy expert, to step back again, talking about the role of a designer or of a product professional in the services environment, maybe at a consultancy, at an agency, versus at the in-house product. I feel like either way, your job is to install design processes all across the company. Now, at an agency, that's a little bit different than how you do it in-house. So I think that's why I've been doing the HydroKit side because stuff is coming down the pipeline. We are the design team over here at Foundation is really gearing up, putting our big boy and girl person pants on, and starting to make some headway here. So it's pretty scary for us, but
I'm currently using the the Fire Festival water guy.
My gosh, that is amazing.
I guess I'll write this quote for you and then put that picture.
Yeah. I think, there's no water. Sorry. Gosh, those peeps. I do actually like typing into slash Giphy and Fire. Will always pull up something amazing. Slash Giphy and cat wrangling will usually pull up some Grey Gardens GIF, which is always fitting, and I love.
It's just classic, just totally random side note. I don't know if you know this. Like my team, the current Rails Reactor, we wrote that stuff for Giphy. Like our ML team did that, so we can. So, and the one I always use is like you upload a picture. Everybody uploads a picture of David Hasselhoff. They don't tag it as Knight Rider. They don't tag it as the 8,000 other things that you would backslash into. So, anyways, so I just thought you'd appreciate that.
I just did Giphy the Hoff, and Knight Rider just came up, man. Oh, Baywatch, so good.
Right? I mean, it's you don't think about all these things. So
I really feel like I can't work at an in-house place that doesn't use Slack just because of the GIFs. I feel like it disarms me in my ability to communicate.
But it's so fun because I used to work with a front end guy, Andrew, and he just would look at me. He's like, "GIFs are cheap, man." And I was like, "Oh, you're killing me. You're just killing me." When somebody you really respect and he's like, "It's cheap humor. It's like Jimmy Fallon." I'm like, "Oh God, no."
Oh my gosh.
So actually, while I still got you another couple minutes here, I never confirmed this. I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I think you're a fan of remote working. Is that correct or not correct?
I'm a fan of remote working. I am. Yeah. Well, here, let me try.
Because some people, I used to actually be very anti, and I am here sitting in UGG slippers in my Merv Griffin.
UGG slippers.
Yeah.
I like Uggs. It's like you turn a deer like inside out on your foot. It's pretty amazing. Is that a nice mental image? No.
Yeah, because I was sitting in the Merv Griffin studios here interviewing like Kramer. But I've, we always had those days, and this is where I kind of want to get into with you a little bit, because I knew you would go off site when you needed to hunker down. And I always used to be like, I got to go hide myself into a corner or work from home.
Yep.
And there's that, but then there's just this other component to it, which is the no commute, the ability to focus. I could go on, but I was wanting to get kind of your perspective on that.
Well, I think to qualify my statement that I'm a fan of remote working, mainly for the reasons that you just said. One, it reaffirms that you think of me as an adult and that you trust me to be wherever I need to be to do the work. That is huge. It's part of psychological safety at work. And being okay with remote working kind of infers that to me, and I like that. Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate with myself. Designers do need to get together in person and whiteboard.
Yep.
And more important than that, designers need to be embedded with the people that they're serving. I can't be in some ivory tower designing, pushing pixels around that have no meaning to the person who's going to try and use it to accomplish their goal. So my statement is that time at desk does not equal work done. And I think that goes for any person, but especially for a designer. Like, it's almost the opposite. If I notice that a designer's never at their desk, that lets me know that they're probably out doing a lot of work. They're out doing stakeholder interviews, they're out synthesizing information, they're out doing usability tests, they're out doing the things that is, the 85-90% of design that doesn't involve even touching pixels. The real part of design work, you got to do that out in the world, unless your users are on the floor above you, then you should be up there. But
No,
I do understand that for product people, we do need to have a bit of that incubator type workflow. My new director, who you know and have worked with, used the phrase test kitchen, and that to me really spoke volumes to me, because like if you think about a test kitchen, it's where you're testing things out, you're innovating, you're understanding if certain recipes are going to work or not. You can't do that type of stuff remotely as well. So I think
I just thought you guys were going to the airport a lot and eating at legal test kitchen a lot. But now that
which is the other part of it. That's why remote work is so great, is that you could just have a bunch of bourbons and
but it's so funny. I'm curious on how that relates, and I don't think we're going to answer it here, to like the remote only companies, right? Like, and whether they're remote product or, remote services or this and that. What you just said, really, I hadn't thought about that, about the test kitchen concept of things and trying things out and seeing what people are doing, that sort of, face-to-face interaction, seeing people's facial expressions and things like that. That's a huge part of what we do here. That's interesting. You know what I don't miss though is the I'm going to the water cool. Let's just bring it up to regular standards here. I'm going to the bevy, and and now there's somebody there, so I'm going to engage in a 10 to 15 or 5 to 10 minute conversation with. And I don't miss that. And am I a sociopath for saying that? I don't know.
I don't know. I think that if you are a sociopath, then lots of us are sociopaths, because again, psychological safety at work. I mean, like, some people don't know what the niceties are, or how to really do them, or how they map to meaningful interactions elsewhere. And I have those conversations, and I like them. I feel the situations that I'm in today, I could point at almost any person around me and be like, hey, let's just nerd out about what Rubisco does in the Kelvin cycle. And they'll be like, yes, let's do that right now.
But then you could also have like it's kind of like a Slack status, which is like you put this badge on and it says, I'm getting water. I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm deep in focus. Like, I'm not chatting about the Patriots game. I'm not chatting about lunch or dinner or the weather.
Right. Don't spoil Breaking Bad for me. I still haven't watched it. My God, no, I'm kidding. But I think if we were trying to put this in some sort of mathematical equation, some sort of formula, the variables in place would be something like how large your scrum teams are on average, how geographically desirable the situation is, how spread out are they, how many time zones do we have, because again, it's all about having high level meaningful conversations and turning those into code. And my understanding of human cognitive ability with language is it's coming along, but so far all I can understand is that we possess immense, just amazing abilities with spoken word, with the ability to have nuance and just expressive thought through words is a very human thing. I mean, obviously no other animals and mammals on earth can do what we do, but think about oral tradition and how many years passed where barely anything was written down, but stories were left intact, nearly word for word. So thinking about, if I were to type out the words I just said and you just read them, that level of abstraction where you don't get all of the nuance from how I said it. Think about that. That's the same level of
No, I know exactly what you're talking about.
In the real world, right? Like, you lose that.
Yeah. And if you've seen the recent Bill Burr special on Netflix, he actually gets into that, but I don't want to offend anybody here, so we'll talk about that after the show.
Exactly.
But it's the exact same thing, right? Like, it is talking about a certain event, but if the court stenographer read it back, then it sounds like you're in a lot of trouble. But if
Would seem terrible,
it would
right?
seem
Yeah.
terrible, but that's not actually how it went. So,
But remote work can work, and fully distributed teams can work. For example, when I worked at a highly distributed company and education-based
mhm.
product, our team was in Switzerland. Our execution team was in Switzerland,
Mhm.
and what we did there was we had a window to their office that opened up. It was like 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock our
Right.
time, and we
Yep.
just set up a TV that always had a screen share or their camera was on.
Oh,
And
it's just like closed circuit TV, like
yeah. So it wasn't like they were being watched, but it gave us the opportunity to be like, "Hey man, how's your dog doing? Oh, your shirt's
Oh, cool.
awesome. I love your shirt. Cool."
Did they ever want to mess with you and just have like this 1 10-second clip going back and forth,
dude,
like
all the time,
like
yeah.
speed?
But I noticed that, actually, yeah, and that was actually kind of some hilarious fun. Like we actually started messing with each other a little bit, like
Yeah.
play the feed from yesterday and see if anyone notices.
That's awesome.
It's
I
like,
love that. That's great. I
it
love
kept
that.
us kind of on our toes a little bit, and
Yeah.
it brought the teams together so that the designers didn't look at the engineers like they were code machines, and
Right.
the engineers didn't look at the designers like they were pixel machines.
It happens, right? Because at the end, I've heard it before. Like at the end of the day, it's like just send me those PDFs.
Seriously, yeah. At the end of the day, my stakeholder took a screenshot and dropped some red boxes on it in paint, and I need to do something with this, and I need you to code it.
Oh my god.
So that's what being an agency, being in a consultancy has given me that level of, I don't know how else to say this. Sometimes we designers can be really precious.
Precious is a good word. Yep, that's it. So let's sort of and it's sort of this, like, so to enhance your skills now, like, and you mentioned I could hear some of that director that we both know. I could hear some of his words coming through you. Like, so what are the things that what skills are you honing now? What iron are you sharpening in your UX design toolbox right now?
So domain knowledge is definitely one thing. I last studied biomedical engineering like 15 years ago.
Yep.
I mean, the reality I'm living in now is completely different. So I'm working on getting my domain expertise up to the point where I can have the types of conversations I need to have. But outside of that, I'm oddly enough delving back into code, back into. I feel like I have a good handle on things like vanilla things, HTML,
Yep.
CSS, vanilla JavaScript.
Yep.
As an engineer, I was taught C++. And
oh, interesting. So I knew all that stuff, which is ironic because my daughter is now going through, she's starting to learn to code. And I'm like,
really?
just let's do HTML, let's do an end HTML, now let's do the body, let's do that, right? And it's like, yeah, it's fun stuff. So
it's funny how it's almost like your parents, forced you to play piano and you like didn't lose it, but you kind of you find a piano somewhere and you're like, oh, like I can.
Or 4 weeks later, it's like, oh, I've got an error condition here. Is there, can you help me track this race condition down? I'm like, no, I cannot.
Nope. Like you've just hit the boundary that I'm at now. So now I'm circling back and I'm actually going more into frameworks like React.
Oh yeah.
Just so that I can get an understanding of like, a little bit beyond Hello World, but more about how, and you've heard me say this often, nothing I design is going to print. I'm not designing anything that's going to be printed out. It's going to be an application. It's going to be code. So I've been focusing on learning the parameters of some frameworks just so that I can have an understanding of how to communicate things to an engineer and to continue to identify the line where I end and where they begin. Because
it's a great skill set. Yeah, especially since you mentioned React, like all the JavaScript technologies are now object-oriented programming. So
absolutely,
which is before it was, as you mentioned, like the blink tags and stuff like that.
Blink tags and JavaScript wasn't seen as something you could build an entire application in that was meaningful, and that's changed a little bit. And now we're running JavaScript on the server side. And before that stuff gets too far away from me, I just want to make sure to stay up to date with it enough to not sound like a total idiot when I'm trying to communicate something.
Yep.
Not that that's really actually a concern.
No, but it's great that you're doing that. And I'm sure that your developers appreciate that as well too, and stuff. And they're not like, oh, isn't that cute? He's got his little environment up in
it is like, there's a great meme that's like designer whenever a developer asks them to change one line of CSS, and it's like Mr. Robot, like we get so like, oh yeah, I wrote some code, but it's really about that partial problem frame and the partial solution that we can make, so that I can just help them understand where some of the boundaries in the framework may or may not ladder up to some of our, some of the goals of the people that'll be using this.
Yeah.
And that's really as far as I want to take that. But there's also some really cool tools like Xcode is getting better at letting designers make really quick mobile prototypes using some pretty simple code. Code in general is getting more and more human readable, so it's like, why not keep
Well, you know what though, yeah, oh god, you just sorry, but no, you just triggered off some stuff for me, but I'm not going to go there. But there was this movement 5 years ago or so. It might have been when you were going through some of that re-education stuff, but like it's probably a little bit longer than that, and I think it successfully has died. But it was the designers who code, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna
right.
What happened there? Well, let's wrap up with this because I don't want to go too long. I said all these episodes are going to be half hour now, and here we are at like 55 minutes. No. If the conversation's good, that's fine. But what do you think happened there? Was it because the stuff turned into object-oriented code on the front end, or it just wasn't the best idea and used people's talents, or?
Why do I think it died away? I feel like reality set in that these things that we're building now are so complex and so multi-layered that it's asinine to think that can actually be full stack and understand all of the components of the technical stack, and on top of that be full-blown unicorn where they can also create the design. And also I feel like people realize that is just asking for a lot of bias to be into the system.
And here's where I think it works out, right? I think you're a founder trying to get some funding, trying to get angel funding or something like that. I think, you're doing some quick MVP type works and things like that. And then after that, shut it down. And, but because I think it is good to have some of those, this was before Squarespace and all of those stuff, all these tools and everything. So let's just crank something out and get a website going and things like that.
I feel like any way that you can get better at sketching, whatever sketching means, if that's a code pen, if that's whiteboarding, if that's a sketchbook, if that's literally the program Sketch or Photoshop, great.
Balsamic, exactly.
But the whole movement of designers who code, I feel like the way that they worked with larger teams was always at odds, because that designer ran the line of, am I being too prescriptive? Whose toes am I stepping on? You're now stepping on every person's toes. And how do you get breadth and depth with that? Like, if you're too utilitarian, I've spent most of my career honing my skill as what I call a generalist specialist. Like I specialize in being a generalist.
Jack of all trades.
Yeah, but master of a few, and very open about where I don't have mastery and where I don't plan to gain mastery. I plan to use code as a way to communicate, not as a way to build something in production. And because of that, I'm able to focus on the domain knowledge. I'm able to focus on mentoring and training other designers. If I'm running around coding and designing and being everything to everybody, then I'm not helping my junior designer gain more skills. I'm probably not having the emotional or empathetic conversations I need to have with stakeholders. I feel like it was just people spreading themselves too thin. And the way that we build products doesn't ladder up to that sort of mentality either. There's lots of, look at a microservices environment. Like, are you also going to code all the test cases and run Selenium yourself? And
what happens when two people sign up for an account at the same time? What's the error condition like? What do they even look like?
Exactly. What about buffer overflow? Are you going to jump on that too and run a pen test? Like, When does it
God.
end, man?
Yeah,
Come
that's a
on.
good point. Just separation of church and state. I like it. So
Exactly.
awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time. Any other final
Thanks for
comments?
having me.
No, Ed, please. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say Baba Booey, Floppa Flow High, Tata Toothy,
I don't know what any of
Mama
this means.
Monkey, Howard Stern rules. I just want to say Howard Stern.
Oh, gotcha.
I'm
Yeah.
just.
Not the biggest Stern person. I just never really wasn't my
I
thing.
forgot you weren't a Stern person.
Yeah, but not by like
Right.
design or any hatred or anything like
No
that.
wonder
Just
you had
never.
no idea what I was talking
Yeah,
about.
I was like, wow, that took a weird. Are you having a stroke right now?
A little bit, yeah. No,
Yeah.
when doing anything, you should definitely mention Baba Booey, Floppa Flow High, and I guess people like you will be like, what is he talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry to take that down.
It's okay, but yeah, I have no editing ability, so it's gonna
Just
leave it
cut
right
that
now.
out.
No,
Oh, perfect.
no ability to do that. Yeah.
The Stern fans will.
Straight read.
The Stern fans will appreciate it. Basically.
Awesome. Well, listen, I'll hang up for the recording, but we'll just stay on for one quick second and talk logistics here. 1 second here.